Hello and welcome to another episode of Scott Reads Comics. Today I'm going to cover Who's Who in the DC Universe, Volume 13. This might be my favorite issue so far. And we can see immediately, those of us with a practiced eye anyway, that we have a return of George Perez to our cover duties. And we have a wonderful wraparound cover here featuring all the characters in this issue, which range from Krona to the Losers. So quite an assemblage of characters that Mr. Perez has placed on this amazing cover. Really love Light Ray streaking across the length of the cover. Love seeing Krona menacingly emerging from this warp portal. Who else looks good on here? Well, of course, if George Perez is drawing them, everyone looks good. Cool to see Lady Quark in action here. She first appeared, of course, in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And we get some of the Legion of villains in here across the top. Looker from the Outsiders. Just a really cool assemblage of characters, as you would expect from any random issue of Who's Who, since, you know, they're covering the entire breadth and history of the DC Universe. So let's dive in. We have a cover date of March 86, but it's published in 1985, according to the Indicia. And lo and behold, look, we have a cover credit, George Perez. The previous issues that were done by, I believe, Paris Collins, who was sort of aping George Perez a little bit, didn't even have the decency to give Paris Collins the cover credit in the front matter. So I think that's kind of an affront, but it's not a huge deal. It's just kind of annoying if you like to see artists' names, given credit where they've earned it. We have an interesting letter here in Who's Who, How's, and Why's. I'm just going to highlight a couple of the questions that this person who names themselves as M asks Len Wein, the editor. Let's see. Number 3, don't use so much Jack Kirby artwork. There's just too much of it. Okay, that's kind of offensive to me. I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan. And Len Wein takes the classy road in his answer. There's a reason we use so much Jack Kirby artwork. We try to have a character's creator do the illustration where possible. And in the nearly 50 years Jack has contributed to comics, he has created more characters than nearly anyone else. This speaks as a testament to how important Jack is to the entire comics field, and we're proud to have his participation. And remember, this was latter-day Jack Kirby, toward the very end of his career, and his pencils in here are really strong, and the inks by Greg Thexton are really cool too. So, again, Mr. M, whoever you are or were, I heartily disagree with your request to have less Jack Kirby in Who's Who. Another great question. Yes, number 5. What happened to the new printing process? You haven't used it since number 2, and it looked much better when you did. I disagree with that, and Len is going to address that straight up as well. When we started this series, the flexographic process was still being debugged, and we felt this series was too important to use in an experiment. The process has greatly improved, as noted in numerous titles we publish each month, but we have chosen to not return to it for the duration of the series. And the series is better for it. I love this Mando style paper versus the flexographic printing process on that other paper. This is just better. All right, enough preamble. Let's get into it. Our first entry is, of course, Krona. First appearance, Green Lantern number 40. What a storied villain. Artwork by Gil Kane, which is fitting because Gil Kane did so much Green Lantern work in his career. Look at this incredible image of this menacing character. He is 6'8", 349 pounds. The most interesting thing about Krona is he becomes the main villain in JLA Avengers, the incredible crossover from Kurt Busiek and George Perez from the early 2000s. So Krona is a very significant character, really powerful character. As an Owen, Krona is virtually immortal and invulnerable and possesses vast psionic powers. Necron has at least temporarily increased Krona's powers, making him more powerful than any of the Guardians. So very cool character who's going to play. We didn't know it at the time, but 15 years later, this character will play a huge role in what I consider to be George Perez's magnum opus. We have Krypto the Super Dog. First appearance, Adventure Comics 210. Art by Colleen Duran and Rick Magyar. Really nice artwork here. I'm not a big fan of the Super Pets. I think they're ridiculous, but Krypto obviously has a lot of history. I mean, goodness, he appeared in Adventure Comics 210. And again, I wish they had the dates next to these. That's one of my criticisms of the style of entries that they do, because I know Adventure Comics 210 was published a long time ago, and a long time probably from the publication of this in 1985, but I don't have that solid frame of reference on the dates of those titles. Next up is Krypton. We get a very cool image here of Krypton by Howard Bender and Joe Del and it gives us some call-outs here of the various land masses and the cities that are located on those land masses. And of course, the first appearance of Krypton is Action Comics #1. First named in Superman #1. Yeah, I think in Action Comics he was just a strange visitor from another planet. All right, this is a great entry on kryptonite because I often get confused at all the different types of kryptonite that have been introduced over the years. And I'll briefly go through them. There is Ordinary Green Kryptonite, which appeared in Superman #61. Wow, it took 5 years after Superman #1 for them to introduce Kryptonite, his Achilles heel. Anti-Kryptonite, Action Comics 252. X-Kryptonite, Action Comics 261. Red Kryptonite, which is probably my favorite Kryptonite, Adventure Comics 255. Let's see. Red Kryptonite was once green K, which passed through a weird space cloud that altered it. Thus, it became the strangest type of K, each piece having a different, unpredictable effect on a Kryptonian. Always the same effect on all Kryptonians. Red K has changed Superman into a giant, a tiny being, a thief, a human ant, a dragon, an amnesiac, etc. So these are all of the story elements that were associated with this type of kryptonite. I'm sure at one point there was a cover with Superman as a giant or as a bug or whatever. It just got crazier and crazier over the years. White Kryptonite, Adventure Comics 279. Blue Kryptonite, Superman 140. Gold Kryptonite, Superman 157. Jewel Kryptonite, Action Comics 310. And if I didn't mention it, this is Howard Bender, Bill Collins on the artwork. Really cool. Love it. There's a cool Bizarro up here in the corner. Let's move on to a double entry on the next page. Kulak, first appearance, All-Star Comics #2. Art by Michael Chen and Bob Smith. Some early Michael Chen artwork here. Really nice. And Kung, first appearance in Wonder Woman 237. Art by Dennis Cohen and Dick Giordano. And Kung can transform himself into any kind of animal he can imagine. He retains human intelligence while in animal form. He's also a master of the samurai martial arts. He's kind of like Changeling a little bit without the martial arts. But pretty cool looking character. Lady Chan. This is from Arion. That's great artwork by Gian Dursimo. Love Gian Dursima's artwork. So good. He did great artwork on the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons title. And her first appearance was Warlord 55. Lady Lunar, first appearance, World's Finest Comics 266. Art by Will Maginot. Another powerful character. You see her on the cover duking it out with Lady Quark when that great George Perez cover we have. Speaking of George Perez, here we have him on the artwork for Lady Quark. First appearance, Crisis on Infinite Earths #4. Oh, this is so good. This is one of the reasons this is one of my favorite issues of Who's Who I've covered so far. There's just so many cool entries, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet, but man, this Lady Quark entry is nice. Look at this. George just crushes it. Love this entry for the League of Assassins. Their first appearance was Justice League of America #94. Great artwork by Kyle Baker. Look at that. Wow. Really cool. There's Ra's al Ghul there. I think this guy's the sensei. Merlin, and the other folks I'm not sure of. Oh, one of my favorite Legion villain teams, the League of Super Assassins. First appearance, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 253. I actually own this issue. Really cool. And the reason I own it is because Block is my favorite Legionnaire and has been since I read Legion 298. Again, first comic I ever covered on this show. And the League of Super Assassins includes Block, Liaison, Mistmaster, Neutrax, Silver Slasher, and Titania. They would later get absorbed into the Legion of Super Villains, I believe, in the Eye for an Eye storyline. Here we have the Legion Academy with great artwork by Jan Durgans and Greg Thexton. Really cool. I like this a lot. Thexton bringing that Kirby vibe to Dan Jurgens' pencils on this entry. And there were always cool characters in Legion Academy who I wanted to be in the team. And I think one of here, my favorite is, of course, Power Boy, Jediah Ricane. I don't know if he eventually makes it into the Legion or not, because I had stopped reading, I think, by that point, if it did happen. This little guy, unknown. Yeah, I want to know more about him. Very cool. Then we have the Legion of Substitute Heroes with some experimental Keith Giffen artwork here. My favorite character of this team was always Night Girl. Really cool. I believe she's the love interest of Cosmic Boy. She has incredible super strength, but only in darkness. So the Legion of Substitute Heroes all sort of had weird, stranger, perhaps less useful powers, except for Polar Boy, who eventually becomes a Legionnaire and even the leader of the Legion. I always love this costume, too, on Polar Boy with the skull cap. Oh, and here we have a fantastic entry on the Legion of Superheroes themselves. Great artwork by then current artist Greg LaRocque and Larry Malstadt. They were the art team when this would have been published. And we just have an amazing double-page spread here with this huge team listed. And I love seeing all the characters together like this, and sort of like moving forward. Just very nice, really cool. Love this era of Legion. Before the 5 years later stuff, which I wasn't as big a fan of. We have a great double-page spread on the Legion of Superheroes headquarters. Real quick, though, let me just go back. Yeah, their first appearance was Adventure Comics 247, Legion of Superheroes. And I think for the substitute was Adventure Comics 306. And Legion Academy was Adventure Comics 371. Just to catch up here, I sometimes forget. I like to mention those first appearances just for some context. And again, we're getting a Marvel Universe-like, Handbook of the Marvel Universe-like cutaway of the Legion headquarters, and I love it. Keith Giffen and Larry Malstadt are listed as the artists here. Really cool. You can kind of see where everyone hangs out here. Like, this is the main meeting hall. This is probably where they were playing Dungeons and Dragons all the time. Or maybe that was in the rec room. That was great, too, to always see that in the 80s Legion. Legion of Super Pets, art by Kurt Swan and Bob Smith. Their first appearance was Adventure Comics 293. The Legion base was Legion of Superheroes 311. This must be a newer incarnation. I think it was blown up several times. Here we have the Legion of Super Villains. What an awesome grouping of evil characters. Very cool. And the artwork is by Steve Lytle. Rest in peace, Steve. What an awesome artist. Man, he's really knocking it out of the park here. Just on the, I'm trying to think who would be my favorite villain among all of these incredible villains. I really like Titania from the League of Super Assassins. I like Tyr with his crazy sentient gun arm. Nemesis Kid is evil. Sun Emperor is totally evil. Very cool characters here. Just so many neat. Ron Carr's an idiot. So many cool characters to enjoy. And they were great foils for the Legion. They really were. That Eye for an Eye storyline, if you've never read it, so worth reading. Next up, Liberty Bell with art by Mitch Schauer and Dick Giordano. And her first appearance, oddly enough, was Boy Commandos #1. Very interesting. And next up, we have Lightning Lad with great artwork by Dave Cockrum. And his first appearance was Adventure Comics 247. He was one of the original founding members of the Legion, and here he is in his original costume with cape. Longtime companion and then eventual husband to Saturn Girl, and they have a child, and that's a complicated story for another day. Let's move on to Lightning Lass. Nice artwork by June Brigman and Roy Richardson. Her first appearance was Adventure Comics 308. Really nice background artwork on Lightning Lass here. And next up, we get some Jim Starlin in this issue. It's so great. Lightning Lord by Jim Starlin. First appearance, Superman 147. I always loved his name too, Mectrons, because of course he is the sibling of Ayla Ron's Lightning Lass and Garth Ron's Lightning Lad. So he's the older sibling. Most people from their planet are twins, so Lightning Lass and Lightning Lad are fraternal twins, but he was not a twin, and I think that somehow messed him up. But he, of course, is a professional criminal, very murderous individual, and he was the founding member of the Legion of Supervillains as well in that Eye for an Eye storyline. I keep mentioning that because it's so good. Light Ray, here's some Jack Kirby artwork. This might be our first dose of Kirby, along with inker Greg Thexton in this issue. Really nice. His first appearance, The New Gods, #1, when Kirby came over from Marvel. Next up, we get a little more George Perez with Lilith. Her first appearance, Teen Titans 25. And I believe she had some psychic powers. As a result of her mixed parentage, she had limited precognitive and telepathic powers. She was able to glimpse the future events, usually warning of dire happenings. Lilith was also able to read minds without subjects realizing their thoughts were being invaded. She eventually does spend some time with the Titans in the 80s. And yeah, she's a cool character. So next up, we have Little Boy Blue and the Blue Boys. First appearance, Little Boy Blue and the Blue Boys, Sensation Comics #1. And then Little Miss Redhead, Sensation Comics #72. Artwork by Steven DiStefano and Bob Smith. And then, one of my favorite entries in this issue, Little Cheese, the Micro Mouse, with art by Scott Shaw. First appearance, Captain Carrot #12. Captain Carrot was actually a really fun, you can think of it as a parody comic, but there are actually some really good stories in there with some great cartooning. And Little Cheese is the shrinking hero of the team. Little Cheese has been endowed by the Lunar Longhorn with absolute control of his bodily molecules. By compacting them, he can shrink to almost microscopic size while retaining his full strength. So very much like an anthropomorphic version of the Atom. Next up, Lois Lane. Few more storied characters in the DC universe than Lois Lane, with great artwork by Bob Oxner. First appearance, Action Comics #1. I mean, one of the oldest, most storied characters in comics is Lois Lane. Great entry on her here. And a much newer character relative to Lois Lane, Looker, with great artwork by Batman and the Outsiders and then Outsiders artist Jim Aparo. Her first appearance was Outsiders #1. That's when they got their own Baxter title. They were separated from Batman and got a Baxter new comic shop only title. And she was like the big reveal, the big new character to bring people in. I was never a huge fan of this costume. I just thought it was just kind of weird. And I think she may have gotten another costume along the way, but she has vast psionic powers. She really is incredibly powerful. Real name, Leah Briggs. Occupation, professional model. Next up, The Lord of Time. First appearance, Justice League of America #10. So again, another storied character if he showed up in JLA #10. That's many, many years ago. Art, again, by Michael Chen and Greg Thexton. This is kind of, sort of, a DC version of Kang. And of course, he probably would have appeared before Kang, I think, if you look at the relative dates of Kang's first appearance versus the publication of Justice League of America #10. Probably an older character. but he has similar abilities. Though he has no powers of his own, the Time Lord's knowledge of futuristic science and mastery of time through his chronocube enable him to field an awesome array of deadly weapons against the law. He is not one to rely on hand-to-hand combat and has never had to resort to it. So yeah, he doesn't really have the battle armor that Kang wears in the Marvel Universe, but again, he's very Kang-like. I like this artwork too. I mean, this has just been a great issue for that all overall. Next up, Lord Satanus. First appearance, Action Comics 527. So he's a newer Superman villain. Art by Curt Swan and Bob Smith. So great is Satanus' mystic power that he can use it in an awesome array of ways. Only one person is known to have greater magic, Cyrene, with her runestone power. So I'm assuming this is Cyrene up here in the right corner. Yeah, I love the contrast of the black and the red, which is a great. If you're ever painting, I paint miniatures. I'm a gamer. If you're ever painting a miniature and you're struggling for a color scheme, you can never go wrong with black and red. It just always pops on the table. Looks really cool in contrast with the green backgrounds that they used here. Really nice. Next up, this curious character, Lord Shilling. First appearance, Tomahawk 28. He's the most notorious British spy during the Revolutionary War. Lord Shilling was a supreme master of disguise. So this art is by Jose Delbo and Bob Smith. Another one of those interesting, unpowered, like DC historical characters. They had so many titles. Finally, we finish up with The Losers with art by Joe Brzezowski and Bill Ray. Love Bill Ray's inks here on Joe's pencils. And their first appearance was GI Combat 138. Captain Storm, Gunner, Johnny Cloud, Ona, Pooch, and Sarge. Just awesome. Loved it. I actually really liked it had nothing to do with these characters, but the feature action movie, The Losers, was actually pretty entertaining. So yeah, and then we have our final page on the inside back cover, which lists maybe places where you might see these characters in current DC Comics. Not all of them. They highlight a handful of them. Interestingly, Lois Lane will star in a 4-issue miniseries next spring, so she got her own series. Little Cheese can be seen in the current Oz Wonderland Wars. I've never checked Oz Wonderland Wars out. That might be worth tracking down. I don't see them in dollar bins a lot, but I'll have to keep my eyes open, and if I see one, snatch one. I still need to cover an issue of Captain Carrot on the show as well. So that's it, folks. That is my read-through of Who's Who in the DC Universe, Volume 13. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. I'll bring you more soon on Scott Reads Comics. Thanks for watching.